Singleton is the first design pattern almost everybody learns, and it is the one most likely to be held against you. Because here is the situation: an interviewer asks you to implement a singleton, and there are two conversations happening. The surface conversation is, can you write thread-safe lazy initialization? The real conversation is, do you know that most senior engineers consider this pattern a mistake, and can you say why? Answer only the first and you look like a junior who memorized a book. So we are going to do both, properly. 9 concepts. We will build it up from the naive version, break it 3 different ways, fix it, and then, with equal seriousness, take it apart and explain why you probably should not use it at all. One example throughout: a configuration manager for an application. By the end, you can implement it correctly and argue against implementing it. The intent, from the original Gang of 4 book, is one sentence: ensure a class has only one instance, and provide a global point of access to it. Read that carefully, because it is actually 2 promises glued together, and that gluing is the source of everything that follows. Promise 1 is a constraint on the number of instances. There must be exactly one. Promise 2 is a mechanism for reaching it from anywhere, a global access point. Now, why would you want that? The honest case is something that wraps a genuinely unique physical resource, like a connection pool or a hardware device. Something enormously expensive to create where a second copy would be waste. Something that must be a single source of truth, like an in-memory cache or a configuration registry. Those are real needs. Hold on to the distinction though. The need is usually for one instance. The global access point is thrown in for free, and it is the free part that poisons the well. Remember that, because concept 8 is where we come back to it. Let's get into it. First, the version everyone writes first, and the bug hiding in it. The mechanics are 3 things. A private constructor, so nobody outside the class can call new. A private static field holding the one instance. And a public static method, getInstance, that returns it, creating it on the first call if it does not exist yet. That last bit is lazy initialization. Do not build it until somebody asks. And on a single thread, that code is perfect. Now put 2 threads on it. Thread A calls getInstance, checks whether the instance is null, sees that it is, and is suspended by the scheduler right there, after the check, before the assignment. Thread B calls getInstance, checks, also sees null, and constructs the object. Thread A resumes from exactly where it was, and constructs a second object. You now have 2 singletons. And notice what makes this so nasty: it is a race condition, so it will not happen on your laptop, it will not happen in your tests, and it will happen in production under load, intermittently, once a week. This exact bug, check, then act, with a gap in between, is the single most common concurrency bug there is, and singleton is where most engineers meet it for the first time. On to the second one. The obvious fix, and why it is not good enough. The obvious fix is to put the word synchronized on the getInstance method. And it works, it is completely correct. Only one thread can be inside that method at a time, so the check-then-act gap is closed, and you can never get 2 instances. So why does anybody go further? Because you have paid for that safety on every single call, forever, and you only actually needed it once. Think about the shape of the problem. The instance is created exactly once, on the very first call. Every call after that, potentially millions of them, from every thread in your application, just reads an already populated field. But they all still have to queue up and acquire the lock, because the method is synchronized. You have serialized a read that did not need serializing. Now, the honest caveat: because this is where a lot of tutorials will mislead you. On a modern JVM, uncontended lock acquisition is very cheap, and if getInstance is not on a genuinely hot path, synchronized is completely fine and you should just use it. Simple and correct beats clever and correct. But interviewers will push you, so you need to know what comes next. Moving on to the third one. Double-check locking, and the one keyword that everybody forgets. Double-check locking is a classic optimization. Check whether the instance is null without any lock at all, and if it is not null, which is the case for essentially every call, return it immediately with zero synchronization. Only if it looks null do you acquire the lock, and then check again inside the lock, because another thread might have created it while you were waiting. Two checks, hence the name. And here is the part that separates people who understand this from people who have copied it. The field must be declared volatile, and without volatile this code is broken in a way you will never debug. Here is why. The line that creates the object is not one operation. The JVM allocates memory, then runs the constructor to initialize the fields, then assigns the reference to your variable. And the JVM is permitted to reorder those last two steps. So the reference can be assigned and made visible to other threads while the object is still half constructed. Thread B does its first check, sees a non-null reference, returns it without locking, and hands back an object whose fields are still null. Volatile forbids that reordering and guarantees visibility across threads. It is not an optimization and it is not defensive style. It is load-bearing, and leaving it out gives you a bug that appears once a month on one machine. If an interviewer asks you to write double-check locking, they are almost certainly checking whether you write volatile. Number 4. Two implementations that are simply better than the one you were about to write. Two approaches beat double-check locking, and both work by getting out of the JVM's way. First, the initialization on demand holder. Put your instance in a private static nested class as a static final field. Now the JVM's own class loading rules do all the work for you. The nested class is not loaded until it is first referenced, which happens on the first call to getInstance, so it is lazy. And the JVM guarantees that class initialization is thread safe, with no lock in your code at all, so it is safe. Lazy, thread safe, and zero synchronization on every call, and you did not write a single synchronized keyword. Second, and this is the one Joshua Bloch calls the best way to implement a singleton in Java, make it an enum. An enum with a single constant is, by the language specification, instantiated exactly once, thread safely, by the JVM. And it gives you something the others cannot. It is immune to reflection, and it handles serialization correctly for free, both of which, as we are about to see, break every other implementation. The objections to enum are that it looks strange, it cannot extend a class, and it is eagerly initialized. If those matter, use the holder. If they do not, use the enum. It is shorter, safer, and it closes attack surfaces you would otherwise have to close by hand. Halfway through. Next, 3 ways to create a second instance of your unbreakable singleton. Your private constructor feels like a guarantee. It is not. Attack 1. Reflection. Reflection can obtain the private constructor, call setAccessible_true, and simply invoke it. A brand new instance, and your private constructor did nothing to stop it. The defense is to have the constructor itself throw an exception if the instance field is already populated, which works, and is ugly. Attack 2. Serialization. Serialize your singleton to disk and deserialize it, and deserialization does not call your constructor at all, it fabricates a new object. So now you have two, and worse, they are not equal to each other, so any identity check in your code silently starts failing. The defense is to implement the read-resolve method and return the existing instance, which most people have never heard of. Attack 3. Cloning. If your class implements clonable or inherits a clone method that works, someone can clone their way to a second instance. Defense, override, clone and throw. And the fourth one, which is not an attack but a fact people forget. A singleton is one instance per class loader, not one per application. Two class loaders, a web container with multiple applications, an OSGI bundle, some plugin systems, will give you two entirely separate singletons, both perfectly valid, both convinced they are the only one. Now step back and look at that list. 3 defensive mechanisms and a caveat, all of which the Enum implementation gives you for nothing. That is the argument for Enum in one slide. Number 6. The reason engineers actually come to hate this pattern. Here is where the pattern stops being a puzzle and starts being a problem. A singleton is global mutable state wearing a nice suit. And the damage shows up in your tests first. It is hidden. A class that calls config.getInstance inside a method has a dependency that is invisible from the outside. Its constructor takes nothing, its signature promises nothing, and yet it cannot function without a global. You cannot tell what a class needs by looking at it, which is a real loss. It cannot be substituted. You want to test your order service against a fake config, but your order service reaches out and grabs the real singleton itself. You cannot inject a fake, because you were never asked. Your options are a mocking framework doing bytecode surgery on static methods, or a backdoor on your production class, and both are gross. And it carries state between tests. This is the one that really hurts. The instance is static, so it survives from one test to the next inside the same JVM. Test A mutates the config, and test B, which passes perfectly in isolation, fails, but only when run after test A, and only sometimes, depending on ordering. Order-dependent test failures are among the most maddening bugs in software, and singletons are a leading cause. If your test suite has a mysterious flaky failure that goes away when you run that test on its own, look for shared static state. 7. What to actually do instead, and it is not what people assume. Remember the 2 promises, one instance, and a global point of access. Dependency injection keeps the first and throws away the second, and that is the whole trick. In Spring, you annotate a class with @component, and by default the container creates exactly one instance and hands the same one to everybody who asks for it. Singleton scope is literally the name Spring uses. So you still get one instance. But the class does not reach out for it. It declares it in its constructor and is handed it. And look at everything that fixes, all at once. The dependency is now explicit. Read the constructor, and you know exactly what this class needs, no archaeology required. It is substitutable. In a test, you construct the class yourself and pass a fake, and no framework, no mocking of statics, no bytecode manipulation. And there is no static state, so nothing leaks between tests. The life cycle belongs to the container, not to a static field in your class. This is why you almost never see a hand-rolled singleton in a modern Spring or .NET code base. The container does it, and it does it without the global. And that is a sentence to say out loud in an interview. Dependency injection gives you the single instance without the global access point, which was always the harmful half. 2 to go. Number 8. The honest case against, because a strong interviewer wants to hear you make it. Let us state the charges plainly. It is global state, and global state makes reasoning about a program harder, because any code anywhere can reach it and change it. It violates the single responsibility principle. The class does its actual job, And it also manages its own life cycle and enforces its own cardinality to responsibilities that have nothing to do with each other. It hides dependencies, so a class's true requirements are not visible in its signature. It makes testing hard, as we just saw. It is hostile to concurrency, because global mutable state accessed from many threads is exactly the thing you are supposed to avoid. And it is very often used as a lazy way to smuggle a global variable past a code review, which is really the heart of the objection. Now, the case for, because I am not going to pretend it is never right. Sometimes there genuinely is exactly one of something, a logger, a metrics registry, a connection pool. Sometimes the object is immutable and stateless, in which case most of the objections above simply evaporate. An immutable singleton is far more defensible than a mutable one. And sometimes you have no container, and no the framework, and adding one to write a log line is absurd. The honest summary, and this is what to say, singleton is not evil. It is overused, it is usually a global variable in disguise, and in any code base with a D container it is almost always the wrong choice. But if you have one genuinely unique, ideally immutable, resource and no container, use it, use the enum, and move on. And the last one. The questions they ask, and the sentences that answer them. 4 questions. 1. Implement a thread-safe singleton. Do not reach for double-check locking. Say, I would use an enum, because the JVM guarantees a single instance and it is immune to reflection and serialization for free. But if I need lazy initialization without an enum, I would use the initialization on demand holder idiom, which is lazy and thread-safe with no synchronization at all. 2. Write double-check locking. Write it, and write volatile, and then say out loud why volatile is there. The JVM can reorder the assignment ahead of the constructor, so without it, another thread can see a half-constructed object. That sentence is what they are waiting for. 3. How do you break a singleton? Reflection, serialization, cloning, and multiple class loaders, and note that the enum implementation is immune to the first-to-buy construction. 4. And this is the one that actually decides the interview. Is singleton a good pattern? Say no, usually not. It is global mutable state with hidden dependencies. It makes testing painful and causes order-dependent flakiness, and dependency injection gives you the single instance without the global access point, which was always the harmful half. But I would use it for a genuinely unique immutable resource in a code base with no container. Give that answer and you have just demonstrated that you know the pattern, you know its history, and you know when not to reach for it, which is the whole point of learning patterns at all. Let us put it back together. Singleton makes 2 promises, one instance, and a global point of access, and it is the second one that causes all the pain. The naive lazy version has a check-then-act race that will only ever bite you in production. Synchronized fixes it and is usually fine. Double-check locking is the classic optimization, and the volatile keyword in it is load-bearing, not decorative. The holder idiom and the enum are both better, and the enum is immune to the reflection and serialization attacks that break everything else. And a singleton is one instance per class loader, not per application. Then the real content, it is global mutable state, it hides dependencies, and it poisons your test suite with order-dependent failures. Dependency injection gives you the single instance and throws away the global, which is why you rarely see a hand-rolled singleton in a modern code base. Know how to write it. Know how to break it. And know why you probably should not. Next in this series, the factory pattern, and the 3 different things people call factory. Subscribe.